I'd like to say good morning to everybody. It's so great to see everybody. I'm really thankful to Armin for hosting this opportunity for people to get together. And I'm really delighted to give you all greetings from my family. And I'm here at the little community of Wakapala. And this is the community I've been in for, I guess, most of my life. And it was here that I got started on my journey as a Baha'i also. And I wanted to reflect on this topic. The topic is, Armin was saying, it has to do with prophecies. And I see there's a young gentleman here. His name is Lee Brown. Can you wave at everybody? Just there he is right there. And I think it was in 1986, Lee did a video that went globally viral. And that was even before viral even was even a thing, because that was in what, 30 some years ago, 35, 36 years ago. And in which he really expounds with such eloquence and such power on the topic of prophecies. And I wanted to say that one of the things about prophecies is that there are no prophecies without prophets. Excuse me. So when you say when you talk about prophecies, then to me that just implies the fact that there are prophets. And now, just to clarify something, and that is that in previous spiritual dispensations or periods, the revelators, especially maybe from the Abrahamic or Adamic cycle, Abrahamic religions, have alluded to this, I believe. And I'm not a Bible scholar, but I believe that in the Bible there is a something attributed to Jesus in which he says, "I have many flocks which are not of this fold." Or in other words, many sheep which are not of this fold. And I don't know exactly how this is interpreted, but to me it sounds like he's speaking about other spiritual heritages throughout the world that were hidden from the people that were in his immediate geographic location. And I believe, and again, I'm not a scholar of this, in the Quran, it's mentioned that Muhammad says, "Unto every nation I have sent a warner." I think it's the word to use is warner, Warner. And but I wanted to mention that the Baha'i Faith is an independent world religion, and I believe it's the only world religion that that specifically acknowledges that messengers of God have appeared in this land right here. I don't know where everybody here is located, but I'm assuming that many of you live in North America or reside in North America. So this is this might come as a surprise, but it's there was a man named Amir Khan. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Amir Khan. And he posed several questions to Abdul-Baha. Now, Abdul-Baha was the son of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah is the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith. And now Baha'u'llah did say, and this is going to be paraphrasing, but it's close. Speaking of God, he says, "Unto every nation, he," meaning God, "he has sent a messenger whom he hath commissioned to announce the paradise of his glad tidings, to draw them nigh unto the haven of abiding security, the seat of eternal holiness and transcendent glory. So that's, if you read in Gleanings, it's a compilation of Baha'u'llah's writings. It's referred to as Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah. You'll find that. But this going back to this tablet, is this referred to as a tablet to Amir Khan? This man, Amir Khan, posed these questions to Baha'u'llah's son, Abdul-Baha, who was the center of his father's covenant, the perfect exemplar of his father's teachings. And by the way, this year that we're in now, 2021, marks the centenary of Abdul-Baha's passing. So it's very momentous, very propitious year. But in this tablet, Abdul-Baha says, referring to North America, undoubtedly the call of God hath been raised in that land in ancient times. So this is I guess you could say the holy grail for this particular point, that no matter where you walk on this land, it has been hallowed by the footsteps of these holy ones. Nowadays there's been a lot of awakening of people to this protocol, and some of you may know of it, of giving land acknowledgement. This is especially true in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and a few others. And it's kind of slowly taking root in the United States, here and there, not very much, but a little bit. And I think it's been propelled now a little bit more by this recent finding. I think it was last week, or it was at least the news came out, of a mass grave at what's called a residential school. In the US, they call them boarding schools. And by the way, it was Canada. I hate to say that. I know there's a lot of Canadians in there, but what happened in Canada pales. It absolutely pales in comparison to what happened in the US in terms of not just boarding schools or residential schools, but the whole policy. But we won't get into that. But I'm just commenting on the fact that these 215 children that were found in a mass grave at a residential school in Kamloops, it just highlights or underscores this protocol of land acknowledgement. So now a lot of people may wonder, where did this land acknowledgement come from? But it has great it has a great precedence here in North America, and it's something that's been observed by the immigrant population since they first landed on these shores. And it's a really traditional protocol. And if you look at the record of some of the early Europeans that landed in North America, you'll find that the descriptions of these protocols, where the indigenous people would have a formal gathering or formal acknowledgement, which would include, usually would include like kindling a sacred fire. They'd make a sacred fire. And that fire, of course, is a symbol of the covenant, represents the heat and the light, especially the analogy with the divine light of knowledge, and warmth of love, divine love, that's kindled. And it's at the heart of every indigenous tradition here in North America. So they would customarily kindle that fire And that in itself is an invocation, an appeal to God to be present during the not only the welcoming, the prayers, but the all of the consultation that occurs. And so you'll find references to this in the early colonial records. And the only, I think probably some of you might live out on the East Coast. I'm not sure. It just has your name, but it doesn't have where you reside. But some of you do. Maybe some of you might reside, oh, let's say maybe in Pennsylvania, or maybe New York, or maybe in Ontario, and places like this, which is the land of the Haudenosaunee, the land of in other words, the Six Nations, the Iroquois. You usually say Iroquois, but also you could say Haudenosaunee to refer to those Six Nations. But that's a very common protocol that they observe, and in these protocols, they in these acknowledgments acknowledge the visitors and acknowledge the covenant that has been established on this land. That's the whole underlying basis of these land acknowledgments, is to recognize the covenant that was established by these great ones, the great ones that walked upon this land. I can read something which might be of interest. I think it's pertinent. It's a message from the Spiritual and Administrative Center of the Bahá'í Faith. It's the Universal House of Justice. It's in a message dated 1972, in which they say, the all-wise creator of earth and heaven has, from the beginning, which has no beginning, sent to his peoples divine messengers to guide them to the straight path. These wise ones have come to establish the unity of the kingdom and human hearts. This great evolutionary process of building the organic unity of the human race has entered a new stage with this mighty message of Baha'u'llah. His voice is the voice of the Great Spirit. His love for humankind is the force of the new age. He who sends the rain, who causes the sun and the stars to shine, the rivers to flow, the winds to blow, and the earth to give forth her bounties, has in this great day sent to all mankind Baha'u'llah. It is this great one who has opened the door of divine knowledge to every soul. It is his teachings that will establish world unity and bring about universal peace. The people of the world are the tools in his hand. They must strive to understand his message and to walk in the path of his divine guidance. Every human being is responsible in this day to seek the truth for himself and thereafter to live in accordance to that wise counsel. The old ones have all longed for this sweet message. Praise God that you have found it, now awakened to new wisdom, now guided to the straight path, now illumined with this mighty message. Strive you day and night to guide and assist the thirsty ones in all lands to the ever-flowing fountain, the wandering ones to this fortress of certainty, the ignorant ones to this source of knowledge, and the seekers to that one for whom their hearts long. So in this, that's the end of the message, but you can see that it alludes to or recognizes the great ones, the wise ones that walked upon not just this land, North America, but amongst all peoples. And it alludes to this essential facet of all the covenants which these holy souls, the messengers of God, have brought to all peoples. And this is also a very important part of these acknowledgments, like we say land acknowledgments. But I think we need to add a dimension to that and realize that has very little to do with land. It's a spiritual acknowledgement. That's the important part. I think nowadays, with maybe our political mindset, we just think of this as a land acknowledgement. We're walking on maybe Lakota land or Haudenosaunee land. But it has very little to do with that from its origin. It has to do with the spiritual acknowledgement, to acknowledge the covenant, the relationship that God established with humankind through these holy souls. There's different facets of this. One of them, of course, are the immutable spiritual laws, the so-called golden rule that is at the basis of every spiritual teaching on the planet that God has given to all peoples. Because after all, humankind is one. We're just one. And the earth is one and God is one. We know that. So we've all received the same basic spiritual foundation, these spiritual laws. Another one would be the social laws. That's another facet of the covenant. And those would be like the dietary codes, which are especially important in some of the Abrahamic religions. And there's other ones, many social laws that you can think of. Like here in North America, I can think of some really distinct ones that really shine out. But I think they're alluded to, or they're maybe implied in some other laws. But one of them would be this whole concept, which is very important. It's echoed throughout North America, is that in our prayers, our consultation, in our deliberations, we take into account our ancestors. We always regard and uphold our ancestors. And then we take into account how our actions, how the actions resulting from the consultations that we make will affect not just those currently residing upon the earth, not just people also, because the covenants here in North America extend out to all of creation, all of the whole of creation, the entirety of creation, because after all, everything in the world is just a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. So these covenants, especially in North America, establish like a stewardship role, a guardianship role over all of creation. So in these land or spiritual acknowledgements, this is always invoked. It's always invoked. And so how do our consultations affect, how will they affect not just those of us currently here, but into the future? Maybe several generations, maybe 4 to even up to maybe even 7 generations into the future. That's something very important that was established here in North America by these holy ones who came here. And I don't know if you ever look at pictures of some of these famous leaders from around here where I live. Look at them. Just look at any photograph. Maybe it's going to be Sitting Bull, or maybe Red Cloud, or any of them. Look at any of them, and you see that they have something in common. And what it is, they're all holding a pipe. I would say chanumpa. Here we say chanumpa. They all have that. What does that mean? That pipe symbolizes the covenant. So what they're saying when they hold that, they're saying, "This is me. This is my identity. This is who I am. This is what I put first in front of everything, which is my relationship with God." Some will tell you that even the word Dakota or Lakota was the name given to the people by the holy woman who brought the laws. And she gave that name to the people, Dakota, which means recipients of the divine law, recipients of the covenant. So they have that. So this is what I'm just kind of like, it sounds like I might be going on tangents, but I'm just trying to talk about this land acknowledgement, which is really a spiritual acknowledgement. It has always been observed here in North America. So that a person will, another one which is very important, I mean, all the peoples of the world have this, which is the importance of prayer. The importance of prayer, like just to get up in the morning, and as you take your first breath, maybe drink that first pure beverage, the water, you have that reflection, that meditation about the gratitude that we feel. And so then what we're suggesting, and we've been doing this this course about this topic of the voice of the Great Spirit, is to identify these holy ones that have walked upon this land. And you see, that would be the another facet of the covenant, getting back to the different facets we've talked about, the spiritual laws, the social laws, and the third main facet of these covenants that the messengers have established throughout the world are what they call prophecies. And that's what we're talking about, are prophecies. And of course, the only reason why prophecies are important in this covenant is so that the people will be able to recognize the day of fulfillment, the day that's anticipated. And of course, everybody has a different, slightly different conceptualization of this. Maybe in Christianity, I think they refer to the day that shall not be followed by night, or maybe when the Lord of the vineyard will return, or I don't even know. I'm sure everybody out there knows this much better than I do, but we all are anticipating this day of fulfillment. And so the prophecies are meaningless unless they enable us to recognize that day of fulfillment. I know that, excuse me, here in North America, we have many, many of these prophecies. And usually they have something to do with the metaphors that we recognize in the environment. I think one of the popular things I read about all the time, Indians are polytheistic. They're animists. You read that all the time. And even my kids and grandkids, when I look on their homework and say, "Oh, don't pay any attention to that. That's a bunch of rubbish." It's just simply because people, when they came here from different parts of the world, they were looking at things through their own lens and they couldn't see clearly. So they'll say, "Oh, those Indians, they're worshiping that mountain," or maybe they're worshiping that eagle, or something like that. But no, that's not it. What it is, it's getting back to that earlier theme I mentioned, that everything in the world is a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. So in other words, like everything that we can behold in the creation is the handiwork of a creator, a maker. And we know that there's the unseen realms, the spiritual worlds beyond, but those are beyond our ken or comprehension. They're inaccessible to us. But the only way they're accessible is to realize that everything in the spiritual worlds, the worlds beyond, has a counterpart in this physical world. So this is the only one that we have access is the physical world. So it's not like we're worshiping the eagle, but the eagle is like the embodiment, the ensign, and the representation of maybe divine attributes of nobility, of sublimity, of loftiness. Or maybe that mountain, we're not praying to that mountain, but that mountain represents grandeur, splendor, like this. Or maybe we make a pilgrimage to the ocean and we stand by the shore and we pray. You're not praying to the ocean, but that ocean is the embodiment of limitlessness and infinity, even though it's finite, but it's the closest thing that we have to the infinite realms. And you see the tact that I'm going on here. So this is what the indigenous people see themselves as, guardians or custodians of this physical realm, the physical realm, because it is representational of the spiritual worlds. And so we, in our deliberations, in our consultation, we reflect on how to safeguard this. Like here at Standing Rock, you know, they right here at the school, my granddaughter started it. They had a prayer run. They had a prayer run from over here on the reservation side over to the other side of the river, which is mostly German immigrants. But there's a prayer run, and that was to on the theme of water protection. And from there, that's when the Standing Rock hit the world stage. That was about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, and they had that huge water protection camp here. It's just on the other side of the reservation, not that far away. So anyway, that was all because those young people awakened to this ancestral obligation of safeguarding and acknowledging our stewardship role with the creation and how that affects everything. So that's all. That's all it is. And so then, anyway, getting back to this, we are encouraging people to take this into consideration with regard to this acknowledgement process and realize it's not just a land acknowledgement, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that to acknowledge those holy ones, those representatives of God who walked upon this land, who brought these great teachings and established the arts, the virtues, all the divine virtues, inculcated this in the heart of the people, gave us our languages, our expressions, all these things that we have. And so we celebrate that. We celebrate that. We acknowledge that. And so now that we're entering this period of time when we can see that we all have something really vital, really significant to contribute towards an emerging global civilization, then we can see that we can awaken to the fact that here in North America, we have these great contributions, not just from our ancestral heritage, but all of us together now, today, we have that. But we stand upon this great spiritual heritage here in North America. So I always hear so much about the people are getting into mindfulness, everything. And I know that they have on the YouTube, I see that they have like the breathing. Starts with breathing. You inhale, then you exhale like that. See now, down there in the Southeast, I don't know if anybody on here is from the Southeast, like, I suppose like Georgia, Florida, down there. The great revelator there is the breath maker. They call him the breath maker. And the breath maker brought all these holy laws. And he breathed the spirit of the divine spirit into this world, into this creation, into the people, the grandchildren. When the this holy soul, that's a woman, we call her Ptehincha Laskawi. When she came, that was her song. Nia Taia Mawani. Oyate wa imawani na ho Taia Mawani waluta wa awa uwe. It's her song. She's singing that. With a visible breath I walk. With a visible voice I walk. Something holy, ancient, and eternal I bring. She's talking about the covenant that she's bringing, the great laws. And when she talks about this breath that she's bringing, she's talking about like the spring wind that comes up after a long winter, and that spring wind melts all the snow. And then when it's symbolic of the revelation of God coming out over the world, and it awakens. It melts all that ice, all that darkness, all that negation, the forces of disintegration that have taken hold and got kind of locked up and gripped our hearts and minds, all that darkness. So that's like that ice and that breath that she breathes over the world, melts that. And then it brings out all the color, all the beauty, all the fragrance, all the light, all the life. And so that's what we can see happening in the world today. To me, that's the greatest prophecy that we have here amongst the Lakota people, is this promise that this breath of God, we say the grandfather, will come over the world and will quicken all the souls. So now we're witnessing that. But if we look at the CNN too much, or if we use our cell phone app too much and look at the news on there, we're going to get depressed. We get so depressed because in there, for the most part, it has a blow-by-blow portrayal of these forces of disintegration, all this, the ice and the recrudescence of all that negativity. So sometimes we got to put that to the side. We have to look at these good signs that we see all around of the spring. It's the forces of integration that are coming into the world. And we have to work hard to align ourselves with these forces of integration. We especially see it in the children. Amongst the children, you see that spirit, the innate spirit that they have, that vitality, that natural creativity. That I was going to say this too. This kind of tangentially related. About 3 days ago, a well-known elder passed away here, and his name was Leonard Crowdog. Leonard Crowdog. You can Google him and look at him if you never heard of him, but he was very well known. And in his youth, he was a great hoop dancer. I still do that. I'm not that young, but he did. And when he was young, he did that. And recently I was down at his place and I asked him that. I said, Uncle, where does this hoop dance come from? I asked him. And he says, it comes from out there in the universe, he says. It comes from there. It comes from the same place where everything good, everything holy and beautiful comes from. It comes from the same place where you and I are from. That holy place, he said. He says, nephew, you're really blessed. You are so blessed, he said, because you get to be among the kids in the schools. You get to see so many of them, the kids. And it's a blessing for you because those kids still know where they're from. They feel it. They're born with it. They have that beauty, that holiness within them. And every day they try and express that, bring that out. And through these holy ways that we have, and what he's referring to, we call it Locke, which is these ways that this holy woman brought to us, which is in the culture, it's in our music, our dance, our language, everything. And so they say these holy ways she brought to keep that alive, to reinforce that until that day, the day of renewal, day of fulfillment. That's what he's saying is, you're blessed because you can help those kids keep that alive. Because as adults, when they come fully into this world, the world sucks it out of them. But through these ways, these holy ways, even those adults, you can bring them back into that hoop. So see, he's doing, he's invoking prophecies, and he's talking this day of fulfillment. And here we are, we're living in it now. All the prophecies that point to this day, they've come true now. They have come true now. And we have so many of them. Again, I was mentioning that we can refer to so many. Just all of them brought them. The peacemaker, the one who came to the Haudenosaunee. A lot of you are in New York or Pennsylvania out there. That's the land you're on. You're there, right there, where the peacemaker brought these laws, the great law, the glad tidings, those good teachings. You should be proud of that. Maybe you live down in the South. That's the land of the breath maker. He brought these laws, and so every nation is like this. So now maybe if I don't watch myself, I'll go overboard, but maybe I'll go to am I saying it right? Peimane?
Yeah, that's right. Peimane. Thank you.
Was there something that you wanted to?
Yeah, we can go to questions now. We already have a lot of questions. So Thank you so much for that talk. That was really enlightening. And we have a lot of follow-up questions too. So if you have a question, by the way, you can put it in the chat and I'll read it in the order I get it. The first question is, were there women manifestations of God in Native American religions?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that this morning because, right here where I am is the confluence of this Grand River and the Missouri River, and I went out for a 3-mile run this morning. I like to do that, but where I do my running is around this ancient village site, and it's the Arikara tribe, the Arikara, who at one time numbered like 40, probably 50,000 members, but they were decimated by disease. But anyway, their revelator, their holy soul that came to them, I don't know how to say it in their language, but it's a corn maiden. It's a corn woman who brought these great laws to them. And I think it's probably might be obvious, but the corn is such a precious plant. It's such a global foundational food, and but it originates here in North America, or really, I guess, in the Western Hemisphere, South, North America, Central America. But it came up here, as far up here in the Upper Missouri area. But the corn, of course, is so interesting because it grows up to the, maybe taller than a man, taller than a tall person, or maybe that height. And it reaches that stage of maturity, then it puts out this beautiful fruit, which in turn will sustain the people. So of course it's simply a physical analog. It's analogous to the destiny of a human being to grow, and when they receive the right amount of the water of life, which as a divine bestowal, the right amount of warmth and light from the sun, just a nice soft breeze, which again are all metaphors for what we as human beings can do when we raise our children, make our families, all of these things. Then that fruit of the human intellect and spirit will mature and bring all these blessings to the people. So of course, you can see why her name was that, or whatever, however they said that in Rikra, the corn woman, is her teachings came to bring the people to the stage of releasing their innate blessings. Anyway, I think about that when I do my run in the morning. I think about the people there and that divine revelator who appeared there, who was a woman. And for the Lakota, it was a woman. Now I'll mention this as another really critical facet of the covenants here in North America, and that is that probably over 95% of the people, indigenous people here in North America, are what you call matrilineal. Matrilineal. Now that's very aberrant because most of the rest of the world is patrilineal. Think of yourself, if you have European heritage, everything comes from a patrilineal culture, whatever it is. So much of the world, 99% of the rest of the world is that way. But here, where most of you are right here in North America, it's always been matrilineal. This is one of the teachings here in North America. So welcome to North America, everybody. Yeah, in other words, when a person's born, they receive their identity. Maybe it's their clan, their birthright. It comes down through the mother's side here in North America. It's always been that way.
Thank you. So our next question is, when and what was the main thing or the first thing that drew your attention to the Baha'i faith as a Native American? And what was your first motivation to become a Baha'i?
Oh, that's kind of a long story, but I just kind of shorten it down a little bit. I was really I felt so how would you say that, rootless, or I felt so like I didn't have anything to stand on. There's nothing solid to stand on. And so then I had all these questions, and every time I would ask an elder person about it, they'd always say, you have to go out there. What they're referring to is if you go west from my house out here, It's about 400 miles to the nearest stoplight. That'd be in Billings over there. But it's essentially like a prairie wilderness out there. So what they're saying is that you have to go out into like a wilderness area and fast. This is one of the foundational laws right here in North America. It's such an important, always been such an important law here in North America, is the law of fasting. That's what they were telling me. Only way you get answers, you got to go out there fasting. So anyway, I did that for many, many years. And I would say that directly through that participation in the traditional laws of fasting here, that's how I was able to come in contact with some Baha'is that were living right here. And that's how I first heard about the Baha'i faith. And it was, and I'll never forget, they gave me I remember I went to, they invited me to their house. It's just over here in Fort Yates, not too far away, about 40 miles from here. And they gave me a little book. It's called The Hidden Words. And I was just walking back to my place from their house. And I said, I'm going to look at that book. They just slipped to me. I took that book out and I opened it up and I looked at that. It says, "Oh, son of spirit, my first counsel is," I started reading it, and the letters just got, it was so weird, just came right out at me. Just came at me like that. So I had to close that book and put it away. And every time I did that, it just kind of was so compelling. It was like a physically overpowering for me to read the writings of Baha'u'llah. And so that's how I was able to, I felt like, to find the answer. That was my main prayer I always had, was that I wanted to find the good road. I wanted to find the road of life. That's one of the main metaphors of the indigenous prayers here. To find the goal is to find the road of life, the way. And so then I always would have that prayer. But then when I got my first Baha'i prayer book, and I opened it up and I came to that prayer. It says, "O Lord my God, praise and thanksgiving be unto thee, for thou hast guided me to the highway of the kingdom, suffered me to walk in the straight and far-stretching path." And then it goes on. It talks about all the transformations that occur as we go on that journey. But it was right there, everything I was praying for. And it was such a fantastic experience. And then through that, through becoming a Baha'i, then I began to realize that I am a legitimate heir, like all of us, to all these rich heritage of humankind. We share it collectively. We're all legitimate heirs to this, the spiritual heritage. So then I can say that I have inherited the laws of Christ, Moses, Buddha, Krishna, everyone. See, it's all part of my birthright as a human being. You have to celebrate it. A lot of you live in North America, so you can celebrate that now too. See, it's our heritage.
Wow, thank you. Our next question is, do the Baha'i writings say anything about a great spiritual awakening of the Native American race worldwide?
Well, yeah, there is a specific prophecy. It's in a series of writings that is called the Tablets of the Divine Plan, and this is written by by Baha'u'llah's son Abdul Baha. It's like it's a charter for the spiritualization of the world, really, that was entrusted. It's in North America, we received these tablets of the Divine Plan, but it's not just for us. We received it on behalf of all the world, current and future generations. And so in there is one, I think there's a more current translation, but it says, the one that I recall says, "You must attach great importance to these Indians. Should these Indians be educated and properly guided through the divine teachings, they shall become so illumined as to enlighten that the whole earth shall be enlightened." Something close to that, fairly close to that. So it is a racial prophecy. but it's a conditional prophecy. It's conditional. So the destiny of indigenous peoples corresponds to the quality, to their quality of their response to the revelation, the forces released to the revelation. So it's not an automatic fulfillment, it's conditional. So this is really, I think all peoples are like this. We're all like this. We can get all these bounties pouring upon us continually, but unless we respond, unless we walk outside and step into the light, it's not going to affect us. We have to do this. We have to release ourselves from the darkness and step into the light. So yeah, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but yeah, there is that conditional prophecy there. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. The next question is there a direct prophecy to the coming of Baha'u'llah, like an indication of a time and place of his coming?
Time and place, yeah. Yeah, that was something that was foretold. Many people foretold this, and in many different forms, in many different ways. You know, I in the summertime, I usually go down to this Crazy Horse Memorial. It's in the Black Hills. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. Some of you have been there. I have some questions about it, but anyway, I think it was back in the 70s. There were some relatives of Crazy Horse, and they went to a lot of communities around here, and they talked to people, and they wanted to share this prophecy that the Crazy Horse had given before he died. Anyway, what the prophecy was about was that I'll kind of try and cut it to the quick. Before he was killed in 1877, he went up kind of close to the Black Hills. It's called Bear Butte. He went up there, and he was fasting over there. And on the morning of the fourth day of fasting, it was still dark out before the morning star appeared. He had a vision. In his vision, he transformed into an eagle. And he flew out over the world. He flew out over the world. And he saw all the diverse kindreds. Now, the way that he saw this in the Lakota language, when we talk about discrete socio-political or ethnic groupings of people, we say oyate ka changalishka, the hoop of the nation. In English, you'd say the hoop of the nation. Oyate ka changalishka refers to the social framework, the structure that holds everything in place. Anyway, he saw all the variegated different hoops of humanity, each in their place, assigned place all throughout the world. And all the different colors, all the various colors, I suppose, you know, like complexion and like that. And as he was soared in this visionary journey he was taken, he saw nothing but beauty coming from them. I suppose like their music, their expressions, their arts, their dance, all their holy ways. And he saw that it was because they were all receiving light and warmth from one holy source, one heavenly source. They were all turned to that source and receiving it, and that which was being reflected back was all the beauty. And he saw this like in this eagle state going over the world. But then in his vision, as like I was saying, this Frank Foolscrow was telling us, it was right down here in Wakapala in the community. He was saying this. He said, and he couldn't speak English either, but he was saying all this in Lakota language, Frank Foolscrow. But he was saying in Crazy Horse's vision, this light was being obscured. Light was being cut off. And it was this huge, thick, dark veil, like thick clouds covering the world. And what it was the evil machinations, the avarice, the hate, all the materialism, forces of disintegration that were taking over the world, and the lust for leadership blotting out, lust for control and dominance covering the world. And the people began, in his vision, he could see they're all being shut out from that source. And as they're shut out from that source, he saw all these people fighting each other, families against families, brothers against brothers, nations against nations. And he saw that, and he saw like just the carnage and the carnage all over the world, the gore, the flowing severed limbs, everything. He saw every heart was broken, every eye just swollen with tears, every mother destitute, every child forlorn, everybody consumed in this hate. And he saw everywhere that all that beauty was shattered and people just lying lifeless in this darkness and filth all over the world. And then he himself, Crazy Horse, in his vision, he thought, there's no hope, there's no future, there's nothing but darkness. But then suddenly in his vision now, still there, it flashed in his thoughts, if only people could see how beautiful we all are. And then that thought became his prayer. And that prayer became the wind that again lifted him up beneath his wings, lifted him up. And this time he soared up high above that darkness, above all that negativity. And he looked out into the future. He could see the light of a new day coming into the world. And he saw that as that light was coming, all that darkness was dissipated. And he saw all the people brush all that dust off of themselves and reach out towards that new day, that light. They're reaching out like that. And as they reached out to that, they all began to embrace one another. And they formed one hoop of many hoops. And then Crazy Horse saw that design put down here on the earth. And he saw it was put down here on our beautiful island, North America. And so this is why this elder came around into all the communities, or many, and told us, because he says, now's the time. We're living in that day now. These young people here, and then he pointed, I was young then too. He pointed to us. He pointed to us. These young people here are going to see that. They're going to see that day. They'll see the beginning of that day forming. And they will be a part of it. They will be a part of it. And it'll be a great day. So that's a prophecy right there. It's a prophecy that came down through that dispensation of that beautiful woman. Because that's what Crazy Horse is, a proponent of those ways, you see. He was a proponent of those ways. They weren't just fighting for the sake of fighting. They were fighting so that vision could be kept alive, see? So that we could live to see this day that we're living in right now. Yeah. So it's a great day now. And we can see that taking shape. I don't know, a lot of the Baha'is know that all around the world, we do have a process in place for focusing and increasing this power of spiritualization in the world. It has to do with developing, increasing our knowledge base, and also developing the skills that we need to become the agents of the spiritualization process. It takes the shape of like children's classes, junior youth activities, study circles, devotional meetings, and so forth. So, I'd like to invite everybody here to participate in that. It doesn't matter, whatever your spiritual heritage is, but we all have a stake in this, fulfilling those dreams and prophecies of our ancestors. They're not here. They're not here. But that vision lives on, those prophecies, we can realize and create the fulfillment of all that on their behalf. You and I can do that.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Our next question is, do the prophecies of one of the 6 nations correspond to those of the others? How open and accepting are people of one nation to the scripture and prophecies of another? And can we use them interchangeably when we have discourses with our Indigenous friends?
Oh, that's a real good question. I think I'm going to defer that question to Lee Brown. Now, he's going to have a presentation on the next week, which will be open on that particular topic. I think we're focusing somewhat on that with regard to the law of the peacemaker, the law of peace. But there, I know amongst the Haudenosaunee, the peacemaker, they do give those the recitations of those laws. It's done. They have well, you probably, a lot of those wampum belts. Those are some of them are used for mnemonic aids to recount the great law, and they typically give them in several of the languages. I'm not sure which one. They have 6 languages, and I was up there last year just before the pandemic, and they had an elder man there. He was giving one of these orations. It was kind of like a spiritual acknowledgement. It was a prayer, Thanksgiving prayer, and then it was all in his language. Then when he got done, because I asked him beforehand if I could record some of it, and he said, "Okay, yeah, you can." So then I asked him afterward. I said, "Well, what language was that?" He says, "Oh, that's Cayuga." Oh, I said, "You're a Cayuga?" He says, "No, I'm not a Cayuga." He said, I said, "No, I'm not." He says, "My dad's a Mohawk. His dad was a Mohawk and his mother was an Oneida, but they couldn't agree which language to speak in the home. They didn't want to quarrel over that, so they decided to, in the home, they just spoke Cayuga, even though neither one was Cayuga." But that's what they do. Those Haudenosaunee, some of those older guys, they could give that recitation. They deliver the condolences. They could do that. Some of them can do them in all 6 languages. I don't know if anybody does that now, but there used to be Chief Shenandoah. I think he did that, but he's gone now. But anyway, I know many can do it in several of the languages there. They are cognate to each other. The only one that's really different is Tuscarora. They joined. There was originally the 5 nations, and then later on the Tuscarora came in there. It's related. It is an Iroquoian language, but it's quite distantly related. Like Cherokee. Cherokee is also closer to Tuscarora, I think, than the other 5. Oh, that's a different topic. Sorry, I got off track.
Thank you. Okay, next question is, there's a prophecy that refers to the First Nations people as the standard bearers. How do you understand that?
Yeah, well, standard bearers, I think we all are. We all are standard bearers. That's you think of a standard, you think of it as something that, like some kind of a symbol that, in this case, it'd be the divine standard. I think this is what they're referring to as the divine standard, which is to uphold the covenant. Uphold the covenant. And so then, all of us, we all have that assignment, is to be at the forefront, to do our utmost to be at the forefront. But for some reason, there might be some, I have seen that, about the standard bearers. I can't really refer to it specifically in terms of like even the citation or the quote, but for some reason, there are some unique things about the Indigenous people, probably the Western Hemisphere, and it has something to do with some unique conditions or circumstances. For one thing, there's a few that I can think of offhand, and that is that that in the Western Hemisphere, the Indigenous people have been the most oppressed, the most decimated, the most degraded people here in the Western Hemisphere. And that is a prophecy from the other side of the ocean. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. So that's, I mean, whichever way you look at it, it's an interesting time, for potential fulfillment of that. So yeah, and now we can see that in this day now, we can see all of this rising consciousness, of the people of African descent, indigenous people. These are coming more and more into consciousness now. And so people are realizing of all different backgrounds, and I don't know, maybe Persians are exempt and recent immigrants are exempt probably, but in the Western Hemisphere, especially North America, we all carry this ball and chain around with us. And it's the heritage that we have, because historically we've all been forced into really non-heroic roles. You know what I'm talking about, like the oppressed and the oppressors, the enslaved, the enslavers, just on and on and on. But now you see, now is a day that we're being all summoned to kind of cast this burden off, cast this, sever that ball and chain or whatever is holding us back, and to step onto a new stage. See that in that new stage, it's in every line of the tablets of divine plan. In that new stage, every one of us has a heroic role. Every one of us is summoned to that heroic role to play. And we each can do that, given our circumstances, wherever we are, whoever we are. And so now we live in this blessed time right now, right here, right now. Yeah. Did I go off track again?
No, that was good. The next question is about the 7-generation prophecy, and how does that fit in with the Baha'i faith?
Well, yeah, it's about a day of fulfillment. It's a day of, one of the things that you hear about quite a bit is that, how when we do our consultations and deliberations, we have to take into account that into the future, maybe up to 7 generations. And I forgot to mention that that little narrative I was talking about, Crazy Horse, that is kind of related to the 7 generations too, because from Crazy Horse's time, then that's where we are coming up there now, up to 7 generations from that time up to now. So they're all appearing now. And so that's what this he's referring to. So we're going to see that day. We're going to see that time. The man who was relaying that Frank Foolsgrove says, we're not going to see that. His cousin was there too. And so he's saying, he's pointing to his cousin, we're not going to see that. We're not going to see that. But he's saying these ones right here, the young ones, they'll see it. So that's in a way that's kind of referring to that 7 generations.
Thank you. The next question is, how many manifestations of God or prophets in Native American traditions are there that we have records of? Is there a
Say that again, how many what?
How many manifestations of God or prophets are there in Native American traditions that we have records of? Is there a holy scripture, or is everything passed down orally in the traditions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, because of the fact that here in North America, there was, it wasn't until 1978 that here in the United States, those of you who live here, that the Congress passed the American Indian Freedom of Religion Act. So that was just a few years ago that indigenous people officially received freedom of religion. And so then, my mom, who was a member of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States, when she died, she was really an advocate of people understanding these divine revelators who have appeared here. Because when she was a child growing up, her parents had to take her and her sister secretly. Nobody could know. They would attend devotional practices. And when she was younger, these holy souls, these divine revelators, were always acknowledged. So that's why I'm saying that that land acknowledgement is missing. They're missing unless they acknowledge the spiritual foundation. So anyway, getting back to that question there. So yeah, these have been, the knowledge of these has been preserved through the oral traditions. And this is one of the reasons why you can see there's such an emphasis on language revitalization, because so much of these traditions were not preserved in the European languages or immigrant languages. They came down through these native languages. And so then even the languages themselves were inspired by these divine revelators, the way that the languages have a unique and very eloquent way of expressing relationships within the creation. That's part of that covenant, of that stewardship. So these languages also disclose or reveal a special facet of that covenant. So within these languages, and especially through the songs, this is the principal, I would say, mnemonic device or memory in which these teachings are passed down intergenerationally through the songs. So even the songs of that original revelator that we have here, the White Buffalo Cattleman in English. And so we even have those original songs, and those are supposed to be from like 900 AD. So those songs, they just keep on coming right down the line. So yeah, those also are conveyed through the original language too. And so that's why there's more and more awareness now, and there's a movement really to retain these. And there are also some records too. There are quite a few written records, and some of them are very good, quite authentic. Like in this, the Haudenosaunee, there was a Chief Gibson. Chief Gibson gave it's a document called Concerning the League. It was published at University of Manitoba, I think in Winnipeg, Concerning the League, in which he gave in the original, I think he spoke Onondaga, I'm not sure. I think it was Onondaga, I'm not sure. But anyway, he gave a very complete recital of that, and that was later translated into English. So he felt that before he did that, I think in 1912 or so, before he did that, I think it was pretty much primarily just an oral recitation. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a lot of good documentation of these, of this information. And we just have to uncover it, just have to discover it now.
Thank you. Our next question is, do you find it hard to live in America as a Native American due to prejudice in the US?
Yeah, I think it's hard on everybody because it's just as, in the US we have this, like I said, this real heavy burden on the US, because really the history of the US it's based on there's good points to it also, but it's basically a history of based on slavery and genocide. So these are, at some point, I don't know when, at some point people in the US have to maybe reckon with that, have to come to a reckoning. And just like they're doing in Australia and Canada, they're wrestling with these issues. And I think in the US it's beginning to happen. If you ever notice the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Aotearoa, when she speaks, she's not Indigenous, but when she speaks in any forum in New Zealand or internationally, she always speaks Maori first. She gives her address in Maori, then she switches into English. You see that? So you can see in some countries, they are coming to terms with this. But in the US, it's almost like a glacial speed we're at. In 1963, the President Kennedy says, the American Indian is the least understood and most misunderstood American. And it's probably just as true, if not more, today. So whenever I go out there into the general public, I realize that this whole concept of indigeneity or anything indigenous, it never really enters people's consciousness. It doesn't quite get in there. There's something blocking it. But it's just not part of the consciousness or dialogue of people. But it's slowly waking up. We're slowly waking up to it. So I think those of us like right here, this gathering, can be pioneers on that front as well, because we all have this vital role to play in this dynamic time in the spiritualization of the planet.
Thank you. Our next question is, an Indian prophecy says, and excuse my pronunciation, Wovaka, a Paiute Indian who had a vision, speaks of the earth shaking at the coming of the New World. How do you relate this prophecy to the New World Order of Baha'u'llah?
Well, Wovoka was from down there in Nevada. I think it's called Pyramid Lake in Nevada. And he was a Paiute. And you can actually, there's a lot of good history on that. And I would refer people to that. I don't have that book, but there's a lengthy document that was done by the Bureau of American Ethnology back, I think around 1900 or close to that time, by James Mooney. And he really does a very thorough documentation of much of that. But basically, Wovoka father, his name was Taivibo, and Taivibo, I think it was in 1863, had a vision that God, the voice of God, was speaking upon the earth. The voice of God was going out over the earth, and that the people had to purify themselves, awaken themselves so they could hear that voice. Now, Taivibo died, and he had a son. In English, his name was, I think it was Jack Wilson, but his name also was known as Wovoka. And now Wovoka was a drunkard. But then later on, this Wovoka had I guess you'd say he went comatose. But in this condition, he left this world and he went out into the realms above. And he could see that his father was right, that the old world order was rolling up and a new world order was being spread out in its place. And the voice of God was going out over the world. And so then his mission was to enable the people to prepare themselves to be a part of this kingdom of God. So then when he came back, he instituted certain devotional practices that would enable people to connect to the spiritual world. And so this is what was called in English the ghost dance. So this ghost dance quickly spread out all over. This is probably too detailed history, but anyway, by the time it got out here to South Dakota, the Indian agent here on Standing Rock, he used that as kind of to manipulate that. He got the press to create these headlines saying it's an Indian uprising. It's a militaristic movement. They want to take over and kill all the white people. So anyway, all these troops were sent out here. Sitting Bull was murdered. There's a lot of ghost dancers over at Sitting Bull's camp. It's just a few miles from here, where Sitting Bull was from. And many people were murdered over there. A group of them took off, and they were intercepted down at Wounded Knee Creek. And that's where they tested the first machine gun on the people there. And I think something like 300 people were killed, mostly just women and children. older people killed down at Wounded Knee Creek, which is down south, down towards Pine Ridge. And anyway, was that the question? Oh yeah. So anyway, sorry about that. So anyway, the ghost dance was what's called a millennial movement. It's simply no more or no less than what all the other peoples of the planet were anticipating, which is a day of fulfillment. And the movement that Wovoka started was just to accelerate this process of people waking up to it and becoming cognizant of it. There's my summary.
Thank you so much. Next question is, can you give us an example of how to offer a spiritual acknowledgement?
Well, the spiritual acknowledgement that I can think would be just any kind of a prayer that we can make in which we can be thankful. We just reflect on the thankfulness that we have to be able to stand upon this earth, right where we are, which has been hallowed by the footsteps of these holy ones who have brought these great laws to the people and have inspired the people to create, like here in the Western Hemisphere, I think 3/5 of the foods that we eat originate from the horticultural knowledge of the Western Hemisphere. And that's just the tip of it. It just goes on and on and on, that the people of the Western Hemisphere have contributed more than their share to world civilization and enrichment. And it all comes through these holy souls. So we can reflect on that. We can reflect that where we're standing is holy land also, blessed by these footsteps, and that they inspired people who prayed and had families and had beautiful music that they could use and continue to use up to this day to pray and to extol and to celebrate life. And in our acknowledgement, we can become thankful for that. And we can even acknowledge who they are, like wherever we are. I don't know, maybe some of you are there in the land of the peacemaker or the breath maker, or wherever you are, maybe the land of sweet medicine, or maybe the land of the white buffalo calf maiden, or wherever you are, wherever you stand. And that in our acknowledgement, we can be thankful that we live in a time when we can witness and be a part of the fulfillment of all those divine teachings, and just to enjoy the beauty of this place where we are. You know, that we can be inspired by the song of the birds, the fragrance of the flowers, the flow of the waters. We can be inspired by that, but moreover, we can be inspired by the beauty being released in the human spirit all around us, and to be a part of that. So to me, you know, when I think of an acknowledgement, it's something like that. Is that we just be thankful for all these things. And could also mention those, the people upon whose lands, you know, we walk. And if they are not there now, they probably didn't leave there voluntarily.
Thank you. That was really beautiful and touching. Actually, with that, it looks like we are out of time. So I wanted to give a huge thank you to Mr. Locke. That was really enlightening, informative, and inspiring. Thank you to everyone for your questions. And we really enjoyed it and appreciate your time. So
thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. So our speaker next week will be Ms. Tierney Sutton, and she'll be speaking on Racial Virtue, the Baha'i Guide to Fighting Racism. And again, these talks are every Saturday at noon Eastern time. And if you'd like to be on our mailing list and you're not already, I'll put our Google form in the chat. Today, we're going to close with a Native American folk song.
The river is flowing, flowing. child I will always be. Mother Earth, carry me back to the sea. The river is flowing, flowing and growing. The river is flowing back to the sea. Mother, carry me, the child I will always be. Mother Earth, carry me back to the sea.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.